we're getting to the next part here. Rust never sleeps. This is the whole part of running vintage pipelines. You really are fighting corrosion. 30 years, probably things look pretty good, but things go on. Corrosion is the primary cause of the majority of vintage pipeline incidents. Corrosion damage causes both pinhole leaks and catastrophic failures. This is a very famous pipe here. What it is it's a gas pipe that was in San Bruno. They did virtually everything wrong with this pipe. But most importantly, what was under the ground wasn't anything like they thought it was. Their records indicated this was good seamless pipe. It turned out to be very bad seamed pipe with a whole bunch of little sections spliced in here. The pipeline guys call these pups. And nobody knows where they came from. PG&E kept getting more demand for gas. They kept turning up the pressure, and one day she went. 11 people died. So now we got to get into a few definitions here. Erosion. Erosion, it's like sanding. You know, that's the material loss on the inside of the pipe, or it could be on the outside of the pipe, I suppose, due to abrasive particulates in the cargo. Corrosion, we all know what corrosion is. It's material degradation caused by chemical reactions. Inside and outside of the pipeline, you got to think about. And cracks can form in the bulk of the pipeline too. So you have to think about all of it. Now, us corrosion guys, we got a fancy name for our stuff, but really this is low carbon steel, so the corrosion is called rust. And rust it is. Catastrophic failure usually results when a crack formed by either wall strength, thinning, or stress corrosion cracking reaches a critical size and propagates. We'll get to this whole stress corrosion cracking thing in a minute. That's the big bugaboo of all pipes. Small, difficult to detect leaks, the kind that could happen under the ice and run all winter, they result from pitting corrosion. And of course you can always blow up a pipeline or make a bad incident worse, as was done for the Marshall incident, where the computers shut the pipeline down and then the operators restarted it again 3 times over a 17-hour period because they didn't believe their instruments, they didn't know what they were doing, and if that had happened to Dow, somebody would have been shot. Operating discipline is very, very important. As of the date of the Marshall accident, I don't call it an accident, that wasn't an accident, was bound to happen. Enbridge's operating discipline sure didn't look very good to me. Not if your operators are so poorly trained that they'll restart a broken pipe. Stress corrosion cracking. What it is, it's really just very simple. If there's corrosive chemical around, cracks form when you don't expect them to. It doesn't take a lot of stress to form a crack or even make it grow. It'll grow all by itself if there's enough of a corrosive agent around. Stress corrosion cracking is minimized by the choice of material. The Straits pipeline and the other sections are made out of low carbon steel because it is much more resistant to stress corrosion cracking than, say, stainless steel. Some people say make the pipeline out of stainless steel. That'd be a very bad idea. It wouldn't rust, but it would be very susceptible to stress corrosion cracking. But even low carbon steel can have stress corrosion cracking problems when there's hydrogen sulfide. And that resulted in a significant debate over whether or not there was hydrogen sulfide in the pipe. Well, I'm not a very big debater, so I just went up to Mackinac City and looked. What do you think? Think there's any hydrogen sulfide in that pipe? Okay, so controlling pipeline corrosion. Now we're into this. How do you control internal corrosion? Well, first thing to do is you make sure there's not a lot of water and grit in the cargo. Enbridge has a specification about that, as do most oil shippers. You're not allowed more than half of 1% of grit and water in the oil. So that's how they try and control that. 0.5% of grit isn't that big a problem. 0.5% of water in a pipeline is a significant problem. You control the acidity of the cargo. Some crude oil is very acid. It needs to be neutralized before you put it into the pipe. Enbridge has specifications for that. You can't put just anything in their pipe. They're not going to wreck their main asset. And finally, oh yeah, you might want to inject some corrosion inhibiting chemicals. Anybody heard anything about corrosion inhibitors recently in the news? The Flint disaster just drives me wild. The lowest grade water treatment plant operator could have told those morons that if what they were doing was a really dumb idea. I think half the people in the room here have enough technical savvy to tell people that you don't take pipes that are stable because they got a big lime layer on the inside and put something acid in them without trying to control the scale reduction. It's just crazy what they do there. It's totally disrespectful of technical expertise. And while I'm up here on a little rant about management that doesn't respect technology, let's just remember that 30 years ago today, they blew up the Challenger. How did they do it? They didn't listen to the technical people. It said completely in all the technical documentation, do not launch these boosters at below 36 degrees. They will blow up. The O-rings won't seal, they'll blow. So what did some brave manager do? He said, what the hell those engineers do? Go light her up, boys. They did it, and the rocket worked absolutely perfectly. It burned for 47 seconds and burned up, blew up, just like the engineers said it would. It wasn't an accident. It was stupidity by management. Got to watch those managers, boy. Got to watch them. We're in a very technological society, and people that are only worried about the bottom line can make very, very destructive decisions. External corrosion control. You have something called a cathodic protection system. This puts an electric current in the pipe that prevents a lot of corrosion. It's no different than the anode that's on the outdrive of your boat. The anode dissolves and your outdrive doesn't. It's a very good technology, but it's certainly not 100%. It's sort of the basic entry level. So then what you have to control the corrosion are the coating you put on the pipe. Okay, that's your main line of defense against all these ills that I've described. There's a coating on the pipeline. And there's been a lot of talk about that. Line 5 is coated with coal tar. Coal tar, that's old-timey technology. It's very good technology. I was associated with building the largest coal gasifier ever built in the U.S. I've been up to my knees in coal tar. I know a lot about coal tar. It's not magic. Your driveway sealer is half coal tar. It's pretty good stuff, but it is simply sticky, gooey, black stuff. Both pipelines are coated. We'll get to what they are, but you know, I like to let other people talk for me, and so when I started looking about this, I found information from a special seminar that NIST, that's the National Institute of Science and Technology. They don't get involved with problems unless they're pretty important. They had a seminar on pipeline corrosion. And this guy, Jeff Didas, he's from Colonial Pipeline, another company about the size of Enbridge. And he gave a presentation on what they need in pipeline coatings. And he put some good pictures in here. And there's some, I wanted to show you just a couple of them. These are both coal tar coated pipelines with fabric wrap. Here's one where the coating looks fine. The pipe looks brand new above the coating. Underneath, it's very severely rusted. There was an adhesion failure, water gets in here, and the pipe rusts. Sometimes coal tar coatings just chip and peel off, like this. The stuff is not magic. What Jeff Didas said is, what are the summary of issues for vintage pipeline operators? Essentially, it's coatings, coatings, and coatings. We need coatings to repair and rehabilitate these things. Deterioration of coatings are the ongoing issue for old pipelines, and they want some better coatings in the future. What do we know about the coatings on line 5? Well, there's a lot to talk about that. It's a very important subject. What we have is first from the 1953 easement. It says we got to have a cathodic protection system. The pipe shall be protected by an asphalt primer coat, an inner wrap and an outer wrap composed of glass fiber fabric and 1 inch by 4 inch slats prior to installation. The MPSC order says the entire pipeline will be properly cleaned, primed, and coated with a single application of coal tar. Up here it says asphalt, down here it says coal tar. The coating will be reinforced by a spiral wrap of glass material. It's covered by a spiral wrap of special glass outer wrap. In the best document probably, which is one of the engineering documents, not a legal document, it says after coating with asphalt primer, fiberglass inner wrap, and asbestos felt outer wrap, and after attaching 1x4 wooden slats to the full circumference of the pipe, it will be lowered onto a previously prepared bed on the floor of the Straits. Well, this is good. We've got 3 different descriptions and no 2 of them agree. No, that's not unusual when you're playing history detective. And so I did a lot of looking, and you know, I'm sure this pipe, like I said, this was a first-class job, and they did the best thing they could at the time. And that would have been primed with coal tar, washed, it's thinned in solvent, wrap of fiberglass, more coal tar, and then another wrap of fiberglass for protection. What about this 1x4 wood? That's mentioned in 2 of these documents. Enbridge claims it's a coal tar based product, not asphalt. They're different. Coal tar comes from coal, asphalt comes from oil. And it hasn't provided any information about reinforcing fabrics or how the girth welds were coated. Nobody says anything about these wood slats. What are they about? Boy, this took me some time to figure out. First, the coating. Today, pipes are coated in the mill under very controlled conditions. Girth welds are coated in the field. I don't know how they coated the pipe under the Straits, but what I found is this picture, very interesting picture of what they called their pipe washing machine. And what it is, you can pick it up with a crane. Here, it's got a big engine, and it turns these wire brushes. Got a counterweight to keep the thing from rotating. So it's pretty clear to me they probably ran the pipe through this thing, scrubbed it off in the field, and then coal tar coated it in the field. This, you know, this is pretty hard to pull off well in the winter, but these were clever people. We do know that the pipe was not shop coated, it was field coated. Here's a very interesting picture of the line as they're getting ready to pull it across the Straits. Now, the guy that I mentioned, Trujan, his job was right here. There's a transit up in this little hut here built right over the center where they're pulling the pipeline out. And his job was to man that transit and talk to the guys on the barge to keep the barge lined up where they wanted to. Get a pretty good view of everything. What's most fascinating about this is an old postcard from 1953 or 4, is the pipe itself. See, it's got a bunch of bands wrapped around it. It's black on top, but it's lighter on the bottom. And there's one of the propane tanks strapped on the top. You can see them that they floated across with. This is a kind of assembly of rollers that they pulled it up from the shore. Finally figured it out. I was up in Mackinac City walking around by the cutter Mackinac. And there's a spare propeller shaft there. And it was laying next to the boat. And I looked at it and the light came on. Oh yeah, wooden slats. Here's another picture. This is temporary wooden slats put on a pipeline to protect it. So now the picture comes into play. So this pipeline not only had the coal tar coating with the fiberglass, but it was wrapped with a layer of wooden slats. Why did they do this? Well, it's to protect it from abrasion, both while they were pulling it, but also it's sitting right on the dirt. And, you know, I don't think anybody here thinks that 2 layers of fiberglass saturated with driveway sealant would hang together for a long time with a big pipe on top of it that moves around. These pipes don't just lay there. They hiss and they move and they snake and they do other kinds of things. So consequently, there was a layer of wooden slats wrapped around the pipe that I believe were intended by the engineers to protect it from abrasion where it lays on the ditch. I found one document that said these slats were made out of oak. That would have been a very good choice, because if you look at the pictures of old shipwrecks in the Straits, particularly, there's one called the Eber Ward, which was a wood freighter they sunk in 1903, about a mile from the pipeline. All the pine planking is gone, but the wooden ribs are still completely intact, and they were made out of oak. Oak was a good material to wrap this pipeline in. The title of this slide is The Mystery of the Missing Slats. This is, see what's happened here. Remember, National Wildlife started this whole thing when they came through and made this film called Sunken Hazard. This is one of their pictures. They even had a famous pipeline expert on their boat. This is the pipeline where it's sitting on the floor, gravel bed, you can see. Really looks just like a railroad right away that they plunked this thing down on. And they said, this is not my language here, they said these things here were broken supports. Well, I don't believe that's correct. What those were those iron bands that held the slats on. And those iron bands are pretty well corroded off. If you look at the pictures of the pipeline now, you will see a lot of pictures like this, where there doesn't appear to be any slats. And you see a lot of things like this laying alongside this pipe. So it's pretty clear to me, at least, that this wooden legging that was wrapped around the pipe, where it sat on the bottom to protect it from abrasion, is long gone. I think that's a problem. Nobody has mentioned that here. I don't think you've heard anybody talk about the wooden slats on the pipe, but I consider them to be a critical part of the coating system, and I know that they appear to be gone. It's funny that the noted pipeline expert that was on the boat when NWF did this thought that those broken iron bands were pipe supports, but he didn't know that the pipe never had any supports. He hadn't done his homework. So talking about the coating on this pipeline, just kind of fun factoids. It's got the whole pipe from Superior to Marysville has got a surface area of about a square mile. And it holds 267,000 barrels of oil. That's $13 million worth of oil just to fill the thing. Actually, when you build a new pipeline and commission it, the day they fill it with oil is a really big day. They break a bottle of champagne on it, just like they were launching a ship. She's full of oil and ready to go. The thing that's interesting is trying to coat a square mile without any holidays, painters' holidays. That's a pretty big order. You can't visually inspect the pipe under the straits where there's lagging, or where it's on the bottom of the line, where it's laying on the bottom, or where it's covered with mussels and algae, or where it's buried. The cathodic protection system, these things are very standard in all pipelines. They do a great job, but they don't completely eliminate all problems. In saltwater, you can measure the electrical leakage of the pipeline to get an idea of how good your coating is, because saltwater conducts electricity. Here you can't. Freshwater doesn't do it. Enbridge ensures coating and technology, that's their word, not mine, by using inline inspection tools. We're going to get to that real soon. Inline inspection tools to look for metal loss and cracking. Inline inspection tools are also called smart pigs. Why pigs? Well, there's two stories why they're pigs. One is that it means pipeline inspection gadget, and the other is that when they're running through a pipeline, they make a squealing noise. Take your pick. I think the real reason is lots in history. But the whole business of running these huge pipelines depends on your inline inspection technology to find features. Features are what they call cracks, pits, other flaws that can be analyzed. Then you compare those pits, cracks or flaws, to whatever your corporate risk standards to determine if you're going to repair or replace this thing. Corporate risk standards vary, as do action plans. So now we're through 3/4 of the way through. Right? Can you see anybody laying on